Shalom. We're going to continue the reading in Acts. And I guess it's Acts chapter 27, and we're going to cover that. Interesting chapter, but it's all about a trip. There's not any cross references pretty much about this when you look it up, and one of the things is like, other than when you talk about the fast, it's talking about atonement, but other than that, it's pretty much straight up about the trip. So I'll go ahead and read. When it was decided that we should sail into Italy, they handed Paul and some other prisoners over to a centurion of the Augustan regiment named Julius. Boarding a ship from Adramyttium, we put out to sea, meaning to sail along the coast of Asia, Arstarchus and Macedonia of Thessalonica was with us. And this, since it's about the trip, it's they started off around Caesarea, because that's where the previous chapter happened, right around the coast of Israel, north of the northern coast. The next day we landed at Sidon, and Julius treated Paul kindly and gave him leave to go to his friends and be given care. From there we put out to sea and sailed under the lee of Cyprus, because the winds were against us. And sailing across the sea off Sicilia and Pamphylia, we came to Myra, a city of Lycia. And that is on what we consider southern Turkey now. So that's where they stopped. And when it talks about Cyprus, it's an island right off the coast of Israel. And then the centurion found the ship of Alexandria, so they had to switch ships. The centurion found the ship of Alexandria sailing to Italy, and he put us on board. We sailed slowly for many days, arriving with difficulty off Cnidus. As the wind did not allow us to proceed, we sailed under the lee of Crete off Salmone. So, and Cnidus is in Crete, the island of Crete, so that's another place, and Shabbat Shalom. And we are, so they were just sailing along, stopping in little places, switching ships. Sailing past it with difficulty, we came to a place called Fair Havens near the city of Lasea. And that's also in Crete, the island of Crete. As much time had been lost, and as the voyage was now dangerous, because the fast or the Day of Atonement was already over, Paul advised them, saying, "Men, I perceive that this voyage will be with injury and much loss, not only of the cargo and ship, but also of our lives." But the centurion was persuaded more by the captain and the owner of the ship than by what Paul said. Since the harbor was not suitable to winter in, the majority decided to sail on from there. If somehow we might reach Phoenix, a harbor in Crete, facing southwest and northwest, and winter there. So it was not a safe place to be in a ship, so we need to, they were trying to move on to a safer port, also in the island of Crete. And when the south wind blew gently, supposing they had obtained the necessary conditions, they weighed anchor and sailed along the shore of Crete. And it's interesting. We all look when we're making a decision. It's like, oh, the wind's good now, let's go. And it turned out that it wasn't good. But soon afterward, a tempestuous wind swept through called the Euroclydon. And when the ship was overpowered and could not head into the wind, we let her drift. Drifting under the lee of an island called Cauda, we could scarcely secure the rowboat. When they had hoisted in aboard, they used ropes to undergird the ship. And fearing that they might run aground on the sand of Syrtis, they laid down the mast and so were driven. we were violently tossed by the storm. The next day they threw cargo overboard. You would think they needed more ballast, but they needed less. It's interesting. But on the third day, we threw the tackle of the ship overboard with our own hands, when neither sun nor stars appeared for many days, and no small storm was upon us, and all hope that we should be saved was lost. After they had long abstained from food, Paul stood in their midst and said, "Men, you should have listened to me and not have set sail from Crete, incurring this injury and loss. But now I advise you to take courage, for there will be no loss of life among you, but only of the ship." So Paul's trying to help them out. He had a good attitude, trying to keep them positive, keep them from despairing in the condition they were in. And verse 23, "For there stood by me this night the angel of Yahweh, to whom I belong and whom I serve, saying, 'Do not be afraid, Paul. You must stand before Caesar. And look, Yahweh has given you all those who sail with you. Therefore, men, take courage, for I believe, Yahweh, that it will be exactly as it was told to me. Nevertheless, we must be shipwrecked on a certain island.' When the 14th night came, while we were drifting in the Adriatic Sea, about midnight, the sailors supposed that they were approaching land. They took soundings and found the water to be 120 feet deep." I always find that interesting because, having been in the Navy, if you took soundings, it was with radar. They had to drop a rope with something and see how deep it went before it hit the bottom of the ocean. And so they thought they were close to land, but when they had gone a little farther, they took soundings again and found it to be 90 feet deep. So they thought they were getting even closer because it's getting shallower. Fearing that we might run aground on the rocks, they dropped 4 anchors from the stern and prayed for day to come. And when the sailors strove to abandon ship and lowered the rowboat into the sea, under the pretext of lowering anchors out of the bow, Paul said to the centurion and to the soldiers, "Unless these sailors remain in the ship, you cannot be saved." Then the soldiers cut away the ropes of the rowboat and let her fall off. So they were trying to get away. But Paul knew because the angel had told him. We don't know how much he knew, but he did know things were going on and that they needed to stay on the ship to be saved alive. As day was about dawn, Paul asked them to eat, saying, "Today is the 14th day that you have waited and continued without food, having eaten nothing. So I urge you to eat. This is for your preservation, for not a hair shall fall from your head." And when he had said this, he took some bread and gave thanks to Yahweh in the presence of them all. And when he had broken it, he began to eat. Then they were all encouraged, and they also ate food themselves. A lot of the translations say that he broke bread, and every time you see broke bread in the New Testament, people think they're having communion or Eucharist or whatever they call it, but they were just having a meal, and that's what they were hungry, and he wanted them to eat because you need your strength for what was about to happen. And then they were all encouraged, and they ate food themselves. In all, there were 276 persons on the ship. So it must have been a pretty big ship to hold that many people. And when they had eaten enough, they lightened the ship and threw the wheat into the sea. So once again, they want to make the ship lighter so that it won't run aground. And when it was day, they did not recognize the land, but they noticed a bay with a shore into which they were determined to run the ship if possible. Casting off the anchors, they left them in the sea while loosening the ropes. They secured the rudders. Then they hoisted the mainsail to put the wind and made for shore. But striking a sandbar where two seas met, they ran the ship aground. The bow stuck and remained immovable, but the stern was broken up by the violent surf. The soldiers' plan was to kill the prisoners, lest any of them should swim away and escape. And why would they do that? Because if the prisoners escaped, they would be killed. So they didn't want the prisoners to escape. But the centurion wanted to save Paul, preventing them from their intent. So he was higher rank, and he told them, you don't need to do this, and ordered those who could swim to abandon ship first and get to land, and the rest of the planks or on pieces of the ship, as in this way they all escaped safely to land. So it was an interesting voyage, not a fun voyage. They ran into a lot of things. And when I was reading this earlier, it was like, you need a map. I brought a map because this Bible I have does not have maps. But you can appreciate it more if you look at a map and go and look up the places where they stopped, what happened. They try to go around the Crete, and I got confused a little bit with this, because the next verse in the next chapter, which is next week, talks about they landed in Malta. But Malta, I always thought Malta was the big island on the left, but I get confused too. But it's interesting to read about this journey. They made it because Yahweh had promised Paul that he'd go before Caesar. So no matter what happened, no matter how bad it got, Paul knew he was going to survive and be brought before Caesar, and because he had requested that. And I guess you guys covered last week that they were ready to let him go but he had in the previous chapter, but he didn't want to be let. He had already said, "I want to go before Caesar," because he was a Roman citizen, and so they wouldn't let him go. So it's an interesting story, and I think a lot of Paul's journeys, it's more interesting when you go through a map and go, he was here, and how he and he believed Yahweh, and so it was a good experience for everybody to know that Yahweh was with him, and to know no matter you think everybody thinks you're about to sink. And he knows you're not, because Yahweh promised him something, and he's not going to. Any comments, questions? I really didn't add. Like I said, there's no cross-references to this chapter pretty much at all. If you look at other chapters.
I'll say it's a great lesson for us, because we have to understand that Yahweh is with us at all times. Mm-hmm. And it's by our belief and our trust in Him that we should hold on to that. You see the account of this journey. We should apply to ourselves. In our daily walk, in our lives, and things we may face. Mm-hmm. We have to trust Yahweh. Mm-hmm. We have to believe that He is there and that He knows what it is that we're going through, and then we can be mindful of our conduct. Not only towards others, but our conduct. Will we act out in a way that shows others that we don't believe, or will we conduct ourselves in a manner that like we do believe? And I always use an example, Daniel and his friend. But Daniel in particular, he wasn't screaming for his life when he was being put into the lion's den. Mm-hmm. He went in silence. Mm-hmm. And that silence was an expression of the peace that he had because of his belief and trust in Almighty Yahweh. So, we can all learn from this. And yes, Paul was aware that Yahweh was going to deliver him there. But I think it's a lesson for us to believe that if we are believing in Yahweh, that Yahweh is with us wherever we go. Mm-hmm. And Psalm 23, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, so whatever we face, we have to trust and believe that Yahweh is with us.
Absolutely, and we're purchased possessions. He paid for us.
Right.
He's not gonna. He's just not gonna. He's just not gonna let us die anywhere. And when we pray, when we got to make it, people move. People go to. We pray before Yahweh. It's like, is this the right move for our lives? And if it leads us to say, okay, we're gonna do this, then He's with us. Yeah, we gotta be confident that we're making the right choice.
But even in our death,
Yeah.
in this flesh,
Yeah.
there may be a purpose beyond our understanding that Yahweh knows, but we have to trust Him, believe in Him, and have that confidence in Him that we will accept, just like Yahshua accepted Yahweh's will. He prayed, diligently prayed that if at all possible, but then again he said, nevertheless, your will be done. So, like Daniel's friends, again, they were accepted in their fate, their death, but Yahweh delivered them. Now Yahweh could have let them die, but it served Yahweh's purpose to spare them, even as it would have served Yahweh's purpose if He had chosen to let them perish.
Yeah. And no, it's I heard something interesting this week. We had to look at, why did Yahweh call us as individuals? Not because we're special or better than anybody around us,
Right.
because He has a purpose for us.
Right.
And He has something that He wants us to, that He will be magnified, His glory will be shown.
Right.
And whatever that is why He called us as His witnesses, as that whatever it is, we don't know sometimes, but we know that wherever Yahweh puts us, it's not because we're anywhere special or better than anybody around us. Right. It's because He has a purpose for us, for His will and for His glory. And we need to, and that's why He did. And it's the same when He called Israel. He didn't call them because they were better than anybody else.
Right.
He called, but through them, the whole world was going to be blessed if they hadn't turned away from Him. And so that's why He calls us for that purpose of serving Him, so that His will be done regardless of what happens to us. Right. And we just know that we should trust Him, that He's guiding us in our lives so that His glory will be shown to mankind, and not to others, and the others will see. And we don't know. We think it's always something, well, look what He used me for. Maybe something small. It may not be this great miracle or anything else, but He's definitely using us, and that's why He called us into this way. Not just because we were extra nice, or, look, I really like him, I'm going to call him into my kingdom. That's not the reason. But He can use us, and He can use us no matter how weak or strong or whatever we are. He can use us, and that's why He called us into this path.
We have to trust Him.
Yeah, we have to trust Him.
That's what faith, be faithful, and believe and trust in Him.
Yes, Johannes.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned what you did about being a blessing even to others. You know, when you look at this journey, Yeshua had told Saul that he would speak before sovereigns, you know, and it just shows the difference between our mindset and how Yahweh looks at things. Because when we're told that, we're like, oh, I'm gonna speak before kings, and I'm gonna be, and so we think it's gonna be important. So we think we're gonna be invited to some state dinner or something like that. No, he was arrested and falsely accused, and now he has to go before this king to show his innocence. But he still is speaking before sovereigns, and he's still professing Yahweh and Yeshua. And so the message and the witness is still being proclaimed. The good news is still being proclaimed. But our mindset, when you tell someone that, they think it's going to be, you know, someone's going to pick them up in a limousine and take them. He got arrested, now he's on this prison ship. But the way that others are blessed is because, one, they were able to eat because he was fed. And because you see they're throwing everything off the ship, and the food sustained them. It said that the guy, they wanted to kill the prisoners. They said, what? But because that centurion, he found favor with Saul. Saul found favor with him. So he knew it wasn't going to be we kill some of them, it's going to be all or nothing. So he said, no, don't do it. And then Saul said, no one's going to be lost, because he knew what the angel had told him. He said, not one hair. And so once again, that proved to be true. And they were blessed because of Saul, because had Saul not been on that ship and all this had happened, all those men, all those people, prisoners, would have been killed. And so, whether they acknowledge it or not, they were blessed, they were saved by Yeshua because his servant was on the ship with them. So to your point, in this day and age, how people are blessed, the world was to be blessed because Israel was spared or brought through certain things. So are people in our lives, you know, whether it's at job or around us, that because you find favor with someone, or Yahweh blesses you or does something for you, that those in an area around you are blessed and maintained. I was talking to a brother this morning. He works for a organization. They're funded in large by the federal government, and other places are shut down. They're not getting paid, and the people are getting laid off, etc. But he serves Yahweh, and not affected at all. And guess what? The people that work with him are also blessed because he's being blessed, so that they're able to keep their jobs. They're just, it's not even touching them. And so, once again, when we think of proclaiming the good news and being those lights, we have one way of thinking of how that's done. But then when we read accounts like this, it shows us this is how Yahweh does it. And it can't be attributed to that person. It can only be attributed to Yahweh.
Yeah. Yeah, we all look at our jobs, and it's like, when it's time to move on, it's Yahweh will guide you onto a different position. But when we continue, sometimes that company gets more business and everything, and Yahweh is keeping you employed because He loves you, and those around you are blessed.
Right.
And we need to see that everything is Yahweh's blessing. He just doesn't. Well, this guy helped me. No, Yahweh helped us so that guy would be in a position to help us. Wherever we are, whatever we're doing, if someone helps us, it's because Yahweh put him in the position to help us so that we could be blessed. And that's why we're always giving thanks to Yahweh. We don't know how He does things, but He helps us. He's looking out for our needs, and we need to make sure we understand that everything comes from Him. It's good. We need to work hard and trust Him, but that's not what gets us our blessings. He does by making sure that we're blessed and we're protected. The hedge goes around our families, even some that are not believers, but if they try to. I always just wonder how that happens, but Yahweh protects those sometimes that are, it's like, but they're not believers. But Yahweh doesn't want me to be sad or compromise my extended family. So He helps them too. It's a blessing how He takes care of everything so that we can be taken care of. And we give thanks to Yahweh. Hallelujah. All right, that's good. If there's no more comments, questions, just trust Yahweh and learn how to swim, because if they had, that's one thing they didn't talk about, but they all had to swim off to the shore. So.
Omar? When Yahweh, when the didn't tell non-collected prisoners swim, so they don't escape, but then they turned around and said that if you know how to swim, go ahead. Get to land. Who's He talking to?
The other prisoners that were there. It was a group of prisoners. They were taking them all in a group. He just.
Some people didn't want to let them swim, but the others they did.
I think they wanted the prisoners were going to swim over, from what I can tell. It's kind of.
Yeah.
But the prisoners were going to swim, and then eventually somebody should come to help with the ship and get people off of it.
Well,
They were that
Some
close
of
to
some of
the,
them held on to floating
Parts of the,
debris
yeah.
from the ship, and that's how they survived.
oh yeah, the
So
rest on
none were
planks or on
lost.
pieces of the ship. So they, but Paul was told that they would all survive, so they all survived.
Yeah, I often think about that, you know, we can be a blessing to those around us. And and again, I think about, you know, when it talks about loving your neighbor, we can be a blessing to everybody around us in our proximity, wherever we are. But it requires us to be, you know, faithful. You know, we're supposed to be that light in darkness. You know, we're supposed to be, especially to those who are seeking truth. They're lost in the darkness and ignorance, but they're seeking truth. They should be able to see something in us that's not of ourselves, but of Yahweh, something greater than us, one that's greater than us.
Yeah, it's not, like I said, we're not these wonderful charismatic leaders that
Right.
just people just come to us. But sometimes they're called to Yahweh. And that's what's important. If we can just give them a little hint or a little bit of truth here and there so that their eyes are open to Yahweh's truth and to living the path, the way that Yahweh put before us. 'Cause
In verse 43, but the centurion desiring to save Paul stayed them from their purpose. They were looking to save their own lives. You know, they said if the prisoners escape, we're dead men. So they were to save their own lives by killing the prisoners. But again, Yahweh can bless us to find favor in the eyes of others. And that's the situation here. The people that were in charge desired to save him, and perhaps they could see something in him. They received a witness by Paul's faithfulness.
yeah,
You know.
because I don't know. I guess the centurion was around for the previous chapter and heard what Paul said. We don't know, but he took favor to Paul
Yeah.
because Paul was trying to help them out. He said, "Don't leave yet," and everything else. He's looking out for the welfare of others around him,
Yeah.
and the centurion noticed that, and he noticed that Paul never tried to do anything, because people will try to escape or anything else if they're in this situation. Paul didn't try to do that. So.
Right, that's showing, in effect, showing love towards others, even your enemies.
Yeah.
You know, if Paul escaped, then that would have been the end of his enemy, you know, his captors. So, but or jailer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of,
We have to be guided by the word of Almighty Yahweh. We really do. We have to dwell upon these things so that in situations where we have a choice of serving ourselves and preserving ourselves, or you know, trusting Yahweh to deliver us and handle the situation, you know, and human nature tells us, you know, save yourself, run.
yeah.
You know?
It's interesting in Acts, there's at least a couple of situations where they could have escaped from the jailers and they didn't,
Right.
because Yahweh had their back. This is like people like to say. They didn't need to worry about the jailers or anything. So, regardless if you're in prison or wherever you are, Yahweh is with you. You can't escape His presence. And if you're trying to follow Him, He's strengthening you, watching you, and your example by not escaping, by helping others, by encouraging others. That's the example that Yahweh wants you to set.
Right.
All right, that's a short one, but
Yeah.
thank you. All right,
Praise Yah.
praise Yahweh.
Yahweh.